This movie is about me learning to drive a race car and my third ever race meeting in a real life motor car. I've done a lot of sim racing. I'm the author of a sim racing guide, which is selling quite well around the place. That's the cover there. Feel free to buy one. And I've transitioned now into real life racing in one of these fabulous little MX-5 Super Cup cars. And this is the story of my third ever weekend. So let's go back to my first ever race meeting. This was Donington, October last year. I was a minute 19 off the winner at the end of the race, and I was 4.4 seconds per lap off the fastest race pace. We jump forward now to June in Anglesey, much longer lap, minute 49 lap versus a minute 27 lap, and I'm 3.9 seconds off the pace and 38 seconds from the winner of the Super Series event. Which brings us to the Snetterton, the third weekend ever of racing for me. So this is the track map. I've printed that off at Snetterton. One of the other things that I will always do if there's a version of the track available in my go-to simulation, which is R-Factor 2, I'll get out there and I'll do a whole heap of laps in the sim. So there's a beautiful version of Snetterton 300 in R-Factor 2, and we have an MX-5. It's not exactly the same car. It's the Mark 1. And this is a stage 1 supercharged version. In America they call it a Spec Miata. So I probably did 60 or 80 laps of Snetterton to learn the tracks. Here we go around the hairpin, the Wilson turn. And so I'm racing a bunch of AI in an MX-5, even though the steering wheel's on the wrong side of the car, and learning the line as best I can. So at least when I get on the real track, it's not the first ever time I've driven it. I won't be testing for real life prior to the event. Testing is available, but by the time you drop 300 quid on the fee and then, a bit of tyres and a bit of fuel, it's probably a 500 pound exercise to go and do a day of testing. So, 1.5 of them and you've paid for a weekend of racing. So I won't always test. And I must say, as I'm getting more used to the car, I've done some local testing at Landau, which is my local circuit. As I get more used to the car, I'm turning up not feeling that I need to learn everything. I just need to learn the track. So here we are coming onto the Bentley straight. It's a pretty quick straight. The performance of this car and the real life car is not identical. This car's a little bit quicker in a straight line. We hit about 183 kph, and this car's a bit quicker than that. But the cornering grip is a little bit better in the real car. So, the overall lap time is pretty close. But I find that for learning the line, getting into R-Factor 2 is just a fantastic tool. And it's no coincidence that the top teams, the top Formula One teams and top touring car teams all use simulator time whenever they can to learn a new track. So if I don't want to spend the 500 quid on real life testing, this is second best, but it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. So I finishing off my lap here at Snetterton, and then the other thing I did was on the Saturday night I jumped on my scooter, and I'm going to go into fast forward for this so you haven't got to listen to all the boring rhetoric, but just to give you an idea, I scooted around for a lap of the track, checked it all out, and it was really, really invaluable because driving in the sim just doesn't give you the same feel of understanding of where all the rubber is, how wide some of the exits are, what it really looks and smells like in real life. Here I'm feeling the non-rubbered line versus the rubbered line, and the difference was quite incredible. So having done all that and watched a lot of onboards from the top drivers in Super Cup, and having had a conversation with James Tucker from Tucker Racing, my track map looks a bit more like this. So I head into qualifying feeling I know the track a little bit, but knowing that I've got a lot to learn during the 20-minute session. So I plan to go out, cruise around for 3 or 4 laps and hope to get somewhere under a 222. And that's what qualifying looked like. You can see the progression there in pace as I got to know the track and pushed harder and harder. Lap 6 I cooled the tyres due to traffic, and lap 7 and 8 put the hammer down again and went out, and I was pretty thrilled to be on a 220 dead. Did not know where that would put me. And that's where it put me, P11. But I was pretty thrilled with that because in terms of pace, 2.1 over a 2-minute 20 lap, and bear in mind I'm the only novice on this grid. So I was in amongst and in fact ahead of some quite experienced drivers, some of whom had been testing all day Friday. My original plan was to delete this grid formation and green flag lap out of this video, but in fact something interesting happens on the green flag lap, which I'll go through with you. So setup wise, I achieved a pretty good car balance at Anglesey, and I was very happy with the spring settings and with the damper settings. Still had a question mark over tyre pressures. I fitted a new set of tyres prior to the test day at Anglesey, so my tyres have done 3 test sessions, 20 minutes each, a qualifying session of 20 minutes, and 3 20-minute races. So they've been through about 7 heat cycles. There's still plenty of tread on, plus qualifying, so they've been through about 8 heat cycles. But as I start to drive around here, I'll just mention a few other things I'll have a chance to talk to you about now. And now I'm weaving the car a little bit from side to side to build a little bit of heat, particularly in the front tyres. The rears look after themselves because they're doing all the propulsion. But I'm feeling something at my left foot, and I'm going, what on earth is this? What have we left in the car? Has something fallen loose, or what's going on? And I suddenly remember that at the end of qualifying, one of my team handed me a plastic bottle of water, and I drank half of it, and I must have left the other half in the floor of the car. Now, this is a major drama, because if I can't get rid of this, and bear in mind, you cannot move, you're strapped in so hard with the 6-point harness, you can't move your shoulders forward. Like if my gloves are on the dashboard, I can't reach them. So I'm trying to get my hands on this item, and at the same time realizing that if I can't locate it and somehow get rid of it, I'm going to have to pull into the pit lane and start from pit lane dead last. So my mind's racing here thinking, what am I going to do? How do I sort this out? So I start to try to maneuver the car and to do some braking and maneuvering to get the thing where I can actually reach it, and I end up managing to do that, so that was quite a relief. Now the danger, of course, with a plastic bottle half filled with water in the footwell is that at any moment it could have gotten wedged under the brake pedal, with potentially, catastrophic results for not just myself but for other people. So that's why continuing on with it down there couldn't be entertained. So you can see I've got it in my left hand now, and it's going against all my instincts and all my normal behaviours, but I've got to get this thing out of the car. So I wait till I'm just past the marshal post, and I throw the thing and get rid of it. Now the premise of this whole video is the question, am I a racing driver yet? And I've joked with a few other guys that you're not really a racing driver until you've made your first racing driver excuse, and I'm about to make one. So in the simulator video, which is about to come on stream now, if you look up to the right at the start, you've got a luxuriant set of lights. All these red lights go on at least 3 rows and then they go out. Now look at real life. One set of lights goes on. I'm still looking around thinking, yeah, there's going to be a few more red lights, and then they're going to go out, and suddenly, bang, everybody gets away beautifully except me, and I'm really, really left in the dust there. All and sundry just fly past me, and then to compound matters, I miss a gear. So all that good work in qualifying is undone in a half a second of hesitation at the start. And the other impact is that I'm behind cars now that in clear air, potentially and theoretically, I would have better pace than. You see, it can get pretty hot and hectic into the first. That's the first significant corner, Wilson hairpin, and you'll see the blue smoke of skidding tyres kicking up. Always gets your nerves on edge. Certainly gets full attention. So the big question for me here, race 1 at Snetterton on a new track that I hadn't driven a single lap of until qualifying, is that now that I'm on the back end of the top 10, are they going to pull away and drop me? Because thinking back to Donington, I was lapped by 9 cars in my first ever race, which I suppose is understandable, and was lucky enough to remain unlapped in the final race. And in Anglesey 3 weeks ago, I was dropped by the main pack. I ended up in a battle with another car, but I was dropped by the main pack. So these guys here in front of me drove off into the distance 3 weeks ago. So what I'm trying to do now is see if I can stay in contact with them. There's a few little battles starting to take place, because one of the cars that managed to get a good start is probably on pace a little bit out of position. And while the race is settling down in its early stages, I'll just mention that little thing on the suction cap on the windscreen. That's actually just my Samsung Android phone, and it's running an app called Race Chrono, which and we've lost somebody off to the left there on Brundle or Nelson at the end of the Bentley Straight. We do about 183 kilometres an hour down the Bentley Straight, and then there's a sort of a left-hand kink, which is more of a curved braking zone than a corner in its own right, but you've got to position yourself beautifully for the right hand of the second one, which is Nelson. Anyway, that my Android phone is running an app called Race Chrono, which is £19 in cost, and it was fantastic in qualifying. It gave me live deltas. You get to see the green bar growing if you're going quicker. By the way, we've got a headwind here on Bentley Straight. So getting on somebody's gearbox is really, really important here, because if you lose the toe down, or if you use the toe down here, you're going to be much, much stronger on what's the second longest straight on the circuit. So that's the Pit Straight, not Bentley Straight. Whereas the Bentley Straight, we've got a slight tailwind, so the toe is less important. But I'm managing so far to stay in touch with these other cars. But just getting back to the Race Chrono, I benchmarked that with the official lap times, which are generated by a transponder attached to the car, and Race Chrono, just using the satellite, the Android's own internal satellite device, on my worst lap it was 41,000th of a second out, so 400ths out it was, less than the blink of an eye. So in terms of for practicing purposes and certainly for qualifying, it's a fantastic tool, and I used it actively to see where I was going, whether the things I was trying were working out for me. The only thing is, strictly speaking, you're not allowed to attach anything with a suction cup on the windscreen, and in race 3 I got busted and had to take it off. So what I've done is I've got a local fabricator to make me an aluminium fitting that I can sit this phone in and then screw it to the dash. So you can see here car 11 ran pretty wide then onto the Bentley Straight. He didn't lose a whole lot of momentum, but just enough for me to get that little bit closer to him. But at the moment I'm thinking, hey, this is okay, I'm running with these guys, I'm running with the pack. The other little high-tech device that I'll explain is just near my left hand. You can see there's a little black box there with 3 buttons on it, and that is just a plain domestic variety egg timer. Costs about £3. And what I do with that is, the race is at 20 minutes long, so I set that for 20 minutes and 15 seconds, and just as we're about to form into our grid slots, turn it on. So at any given moment I can look down and see exactly how long there is to go in the race, because you totally lose track of that. So I might walk us around a lap of Snetterton 300. So I'm chasing, we've got 3 cars ahead of me here as we head down the main straight, the Pit Straight, and I'm getting a bit of a draft here into a slight headwind, and that's given me a chance to launch and attack here. Our cars are in theory very, very equal, but some cars have just got a little bit more legs. My car seems to be relatively quick. So this is a fast right-hander. Rich's is just a bit of a touch of the brakes and a launch into the unknown, leaving the car in 4th, and back on the gas again as we approach Montreal hairpin. Now you can see the car on the right there locking their brakes up. That's probably due to the fact there is not as much rubber over there. The line is so rubbered in the main braking area for Montreal, it's almost unbelievable how late you can brake. So then it's up to 3rd gear, and then the left-hander Palmer. Palmer is a fairly late apex, so these guys dive into the apex pretty quickly. I run a little bit later apex and normally have a bit better exit speed. And then we're coming up to Agostini, fairly big braking zone, and a 2nd gear left-hander, and Agostini exit is everything. I tended to be getting fairly good drive out of Agostini. Some other people were running it in a little bit quicker than me, but getting a little bit bent out of shape, although that does happen to me later on. But then Hamilton is the 3rd gear, pretty much flat in 3rd, slight lift, and then into Oggies. Now Oggies is quite tight at the first part of the corner when I get myself into all sorts of bother there. But on my track inspection, these are the things you learn. It's very, very wide on the exit, so I tended to leave it in 3rd. Now we're now in Williams corner, and Williams is critical because your exit speed on Williams, and I'm dropping these guys, dropping back a bit from these guys due to my untidy episode in Oggies, but their battle is probably going to help me stay in touch with them. But Williams critical to get good entry speed for Bentley Straight, and here we're almost on the limiter in fourth. Dab of the brakes, get off the brakes, grab third while we're in a straight line, and I'm running third through there. Some people grab second, and I'm tending to be getting a fairly good line there. This is bomb hole. It's either a lift, it's B-O-M-B, bomb hole. That's either a short lift or a short shift into fourth, and I'm using a short shift into fourth, although my skill set is handed back to me in my hat later on in one of these races when somebody just jumps on me there. And the final corner is called Murray's, and that's onto the second longest straight. It's only marginally shorter than Bentley Straight, the pit straight, and I'm getting a pretty good run here. The line is everything into Murray's, and I managed to get a good line there, and I've got a run on that white car here, and I'm pulling up beside him. We're just about touching about 180 kph now. I'm on the better line, so he's had to lift, and that's the thing in the faster corners. There's no point throwing it up the inside in a really high speed corner, because unless you're on a really good line, you're going to be in a spot of bother. So I've managed to make a racing pass there on a very experienced driver, so that makes me happy. That car's run a little bit wide there on the exit of the Montreal hairpin, and that little problem on exit comes back to haunt that car a little bit later in the race. So, and now we're back again into Palmer and heading up towards Agostini. Agostini, pretty big braking zone, and you know, if you push it too hard, you know, jump on the brakes too late. I've downshifted a bit early there, and that's why I get that rear lock up, but the car in front of me has their own issues as well. So we're in a nice little fight here. Now, unfortunately, because one of these cars up ahead's been pretty good at defending, but not running a fantastic lap time, we've kind of been segregated a bit from the main pack. You would have seen there that I grabbed a few meters then under brakes for Oggies, and that you'll see that's a theme that tends to come up. From my track inspection, I realised although the first part of Oggies is quite tight, as I mentioned before, not only is it very, very wide, but the second half of that corner is a very, very big apex, I mean big angle. So the first part's tight, the second part's not as tight, and it's very, very wide, so you can carry more speed in there than you might imagine. Now, this driver's defending hard into a fairly fast corner by taking the inside line, but that compromises them a bit for the right-hander. And I can see dust and smoke here. Some more people have left the track, and I think shortly we might have a safety car thrown. Now, the corner we're coming up to now is after Bomb Hole, is a ton of fun. This is called Coram, and it's a fourth gear corner where you're as flat as you dare, as flat as you can manage to be, and still keep the car turned in. So you tend to be feathering the throttle and going absolutely as fast as you can. Now, I made a misshift, grabbed fifth gear there instead of third, and all that good work there overtaking this white car earlier is gone, and he's back in front of me. But hey, that's racing when you've got an H-gate pattern. And he's learnt this time to be over on the left, although we've got somebody else attacking him. That was one of the cars that was off on the grass earlier, really making it his business to get back up the front again. So you'll recall that last run through Brundle and Nelson after the overhead bridge, we saw all that dust, and we saw, I did point out the car on the left-hand side, but I didn't mention there was a car on the right-hand side. He's stuck there on the grass near the apex, and that has necessitated a safety car. So race one winds down to a close, and yeah, a little bit bitty. A lot of interruptions, not a lot of clear laps, a lot of fighting, and my best lap time was a 2:23. And as we now move forward to the start of race 2, I'm determined to get off to a better start. And indeed I did get a much better start. Out of the box well, drew up beside the cars in the row in front of me and was there to be reckoned with all the way down to turn 1, and then I got done into turn 2. But you know, step by step, I guess. So with the restart after the safety car period, we've only got maximum of 2 laps to go, and I've got a couple of quick guys behind me, one of whom I know at least scored 2 podiums in Anglesey. So I'm pretty keen to see if I can actually get this working and stay in front of these quick guys. I mean, after all, this whole premise of this whole production is about, am I a racing driver yet? So I figure if I can stay in front of these guys, then maybe I am a racing driver. And to an extent, the pressure is on. So here we have the start of race 3, and my heartfelt goal here is just to see if I can run with the pack. If I can stay with the top 10, stay in contact with the top 10 and not be dropped into no man's land, I'm going to be a happy camper. I'm going to minimise comments for this last race. This will be the race in full. There's no safety car interventions in this race. And my copy of Windows Movie Maker is just throwing a spasm every time I go to save it. It's melting down and I'm losing data. So I'm not going to do much more talking. Maybe that's a good thing. But enjoy the race. A 20-minute race, uninterrupted. My rear tyres start to go away towards the end. That'll be very obvious when that starts to happen. But it's a nice race. Not a heap of overtaking moves from me. A couple of little errors, but the task is to see if I can stay in touch. You can be the judge whether I manage to do that. have it. Third weekend of racing. 1.6 seconds off fastest lap of race. 25 seconds from the winner and 10 seconds from a podium. Am I a racing driver yet? Now, one of the nice things that happens immediately after a race on the cool down lap, and especially on the last race of the weekend, all the marshals come out and wave, at least, or sometimes wave with their flags at you, and you feel a bit like a superstar. You've finished the race and you're being acknowledged by all of the track marshals on the way around. So I always make a big effort to wave at every marshal station and thank them for all their time and efforts. But it's quite a nice feeling. On behalf of my 1971 11-year-old self, thank you very, very much for doing me the honour of watching my video.